In a bustling city where dreams are forged and shattered, Noor, a struggling 29-year-old artist, faces an impossible choice. When eviction looms, a wealthy, enigmatic man named Victor, 58, offers salvation at a steep personal cost. What starts as a desperate arrangement becomes a labyrinth of emotions, power, and self-destruction. Is survival worth the price of one's soul? Noor's life has become a relentless battle against time and circumstance. Her tiny apartment, once a refuge for her creative spirit, now feels like a prison. Bills scatter across every surface, their red letters screaming overdue, while eviction notices pinned to her fridge serve as a cruel reminder of her crumbling world. At 29, Noor imagined herself showcasing her vibrant, emotive paintings in galleries around the world, but reality has reduced her dreams to ash. Her once bold strokes on the canvas now feel timid, uncertain. She stares at her unfinished painting, a woman reaching for a glowing orb, and wonders if it's a metaphor for her own life, constantly grasping but never quite touching success. Hunger gnaws at her stomach. But it's the weight of her failure that's truly unbearable. The knock at her door one afternoon jolts her out of her thoughts. It's her landlord, delivering an ultimatum: pay the rent by the end of the week or pack up and leave. Panic sets in. She's tried everything, selling paintings, picking up odd jobs, but nothing has been enough. As she sits on the floor surrounded by her artwork, tears streaming down her face, she doesn't know that her life is about to take a turn she never expected, a turn that will test her limits and her sense of self. The invitation to the gallery felt like a small beacon of hope in Noor's otherwise bleak world. She didn't expect much, just another evening of mingling with wealthy strangers who sipped champagne and barely glanced at her work. But that night her path crossed with Victor's, and everything changed. Victor was unlike anyone she had ever met. At 58, he carried himself with an air of quiet confidence that demanded attention. His tailored suit fit perfectly, his silver-streaked hair gleaming under the gallery lights. When his eyes landed on Noor's painting, he paused, studying it with an intensity that made her heart race. "You have real talent," he said, his deep voice cutting through the crowd's chatter. Noor blinked, startled by his presence. "Thank you," she murmured, her cheeks flushing. Victor introduced himself as a philanthropist and art collector. Their conversation flowed easily, too easily. He spoke about art, ambition, and the struggles of creative minds. He seemed to understand her plight in a way no one else had. As the night wore on, he handed her his card. "If you ever need support, don't hesitate to call me," he said, his tone kind but laced with something she couldn't quite place. Noor hesitated, staring at the card in her hand. Was this a lifeline or a trap? As she walked home, she couldn't shake the feeling that Victor's words held more weight than she wanted to admit. Desperation has a way of silencing doubts, and Noor finds herself dialing Victor's number. Her landlord's threat plays on a loop in her mind, drowning out her pride. She tells herself this is just a meeting, a chance to explore possibilities, nothing more. Victor doesn't hesitate. He invites her to an upscale restaurant, the kind she's only seen in movies. As she steps through the doors that evening, she feels out of place, her worn dress contrasting sharply with the glittering chandeliers and tailored suits around her. Victor greets her warmly, his confidence unnerving. They talk about art and ambition, but soon the conversation shifts. He leans forward, his voice low and steady, as he makes his offer. "I can take care of your financial troubles," he says, his eyes locking onto hers. "Pay your rent, help with your career. But everything has a price." Her stomach tightens as his meaning becomes clear. The words linger between them, unspoken yet unmistakable. Spend a night with him, and her problems will disappear. Noor's mind races. She feels a storm of emotions: humiliation, anger, and even a flicker of temptation. She's drowning, and here is a lifeline, but it's tethered to something dark. Victor doesn't pressure her, he simply waits, confident that the weight of her circumstances will make her choice for her. That night she walks home in a daze, Victor's words echoing in her ears. The decision looms, impossible to ignore, and with each passing moment, the walls of her tiny apartment seem to close in tighter. Noor spends the next few days locked in an internal battle. She tells herself she can find another way, but every attempt falls flat. She tries to sell her paintings, reaching out to galleries and collectors, but no one bites. The eviction notice on her desk feels like a ticking time bomb, and with each passing hour, the weight of her decision presses harder. On the night of her deadline, she finds herself standing in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. She doesn't recognize the woman looking back. Her makeup is heavier than usual, her hair carefully styled. She's wearing a dress she hasn't touched in years, something elegant and alluring, a costume for a role she never wanted to play. Her heart pounds as she grabs her coat and steps into the night. The city feels alive around her, oblivious to the turmoil in her chest. When she arrives at Victor's penthouse, the grandeur of the building is overwhelming. A doorman greets her, and as she rides the elevator up, she feels like she's ascending into another world, a world she doesn't belong to but is about to enter. Victor welcomes her with a glass of wine and a warm smile, as if this were just another casual evening. Noor tries to steady herself, reminding herself why she's here. Survival, nothing more. But as the night unfolds, she realizes it won't be that simple. Victor's penthouse is a marvel of opulence, with sprawling views of the city and furnishings that scream wealth and power. Noor feels small and out of place, a stark contrast to her usual surroundings. She sips the wine he offers, trying to quiet the voice in her head screaming at her to leave. The evening begins with conversation, Victor's charm disarming her more than she expected. He talks about art, life, and the struggles he faced on his way to success. Noor finds herself drawn to him, despite the circumstances. His confidence is magnetic, his words carefully chosen to make her feel seen and valued. But when the conversation fades and the night takes its inevitable turn, the illusion shatters. Noor feels like she's watching herself from the outside, a puppet moving through the motions. Victor is gentle yet commanding, his presence both intoxicating and suffocating. She feels a strange pull toward him, even as her soul recoils. By the time the night ends, Noor is left with an envelope of cash and a hollow ache in her chest. As she leaves Victor's penthouse, the city lights blur through her tears. The money is enough to cover her rent, but the cost feels far greater than she anticipated. The morning after feels like waking from a dream, a disorienting, haunting dream that lingers long after the night is over. Noor clutches the envelope Victor gave her, its weight both a relief and a reminder of the price she's paid. Back in her apartment, she immediately transfers the rent money, her landlord's threats silenced for now. But as she looks around her tiny space, there's no sense of triumph, no lightness in her heart. Instead, she feels a profound emptiness. Every corner of her apartment, once a testament to her creative spirit, now feels tainted by the memory of what she's done. She avoids her mirror, unable to face the person looking back. Noor spends the day in silence, her mind a whirl of regret and self-loathing. She tries to paint, hoping to find solace in her art, but the canvas remains blank. Her hands tremble as she holds the brush, the weight of her choice making her feel like a stranger in her own skin. Victor's texts come as no surprise. They're polite, even kind, but each one carries an undertone that makes her stomach churn. He thanks her for the evening and offers to meet again, dangling the promise of more financial support. Noor deletes the messages, telling herself she's done. This was a one-time mistake, a desperate decision she'll never repeat. But the world doesn't wait for her to heal. As the weeks pass, bills pile up again, and the cycle of fear and desperation begins anew. It doesn't take long for Noor to find herself back where she started, broke, scared, and out of options. Her resolve not to call Victor crumbles under the weight of mounting bills and an empty fridge. She tells herself it's temporary, just one more night to get through this rough patch. Victor greets her like an old friend, his demeanor calm and reassuring. The arrangement feels disturbingly familiar now, a transactional rhythm that leaves her feeling both trapped and strangely comforted. With each encounter, the lines blur further. Noor hates what she's doing, but she can't deny the allure of stability, however fleeting it may be. Yet something deeper begins to shift. Victor starts to take a more active role in her life. He offers unsolicited advice about her art, suggesting themes and even criticizing her techniques. His words, though framed as encouragement, feel like control disguised as kindness. He gifts her expensive supplies, pieces she can't afford but now feels indebted to use. Noor becomes increasingly aware of the power imbalance between them. Each visit feels less like a choice and more like an obligation. She begins to resent Victor, but she can't ignore the small part of her that craves his attention. His approval becomes a twisted source of validation, a dangerous thread tying her self-worth to his whims. As her dependency deepens, Noor feels her identity slipping away. She's no longer just an artist struggling to make ends meet. She's someone entangled in a relationship she doesn't fully understand, one that threatens to consume her completely. The arrangement with Victor begins to take on a life of its own, twisting into something Noor can no longer define. What started as a desperate financial exchange now feels like a web she's caught in, with Victor at its center. Victor becomes more involved in Noor's world, inserting himself into her art and personal decisions. At first, his advice seems helpful. "Your work needs more emotion," he tells her one evening, his fingers grazing the edge of a canvas. "Tap into the rawness of your life." People love authenticity, but his suggestions quickly escalate into demands. He criticizes her color choices, dismisses her themes, and even encourages her to paint pieces he envisions, not ones born from her soul. Each time she bites her tongue, convincing herself this is the cost of his support. Yet with every compromise, she feels a piece of herself slipping away. Victor's gifts also begin to weigh on her: a new easel, expensive paints, even an advanced tablet for digital work. She knows she can't afford any of it on her own, and the more she accepts, the more she feels tethered to him. Their interactions become a dizzying mix of warmth and tension. Victor praises her one moment, then subtly reminds her of her reliance on him the next. His words sting like velvet-covered thorns. "You're lucky to have someone who believes in you," he says with a soft smile, and she nods, swallowing the bitterness rising in her throat. Noor starts to question everything: her art, her choices, and her very sense of self. The line between survival and exploitation blurs further, leaving her trapped in a life that feels increasingly like a prison. One night, Noor stands in front of her easel, staring at a painting Victor commissioned from her. It feels lifeless, a hollow shell of what her art used to be. Frustration boils over, and she throws her brush across the room, watching as it splatters paint across the walls. The rage is cathartic, but it's also a wake-up call. Noor realizes she can't keep living like this. Victor's control has seeped into every corner of her life, and if she doesn't take it back, she fears she'll lose herself completely. The next time Victor calls, she agrees to meet but decides it will be different. She arrives at his penthouse with a box of every gift he's given her: paint supplies, luxury items, everything. "What's this?" Victor asks, his tone calm but his eyes narrowing. "I'm done," Noor says, her voice trembling but resolute. "I can't keep doing this." Victor's expression darkens. He accuses her of being ungrateful, of using him. The confrontation is intense, with Noor's emotions spilling over as years of frustration and regret pour out. For the first time, she sees through Victor's facade, recognizing his manipulation for what it is. She leaves his penthouse shaken but determined. For the first time in what feels like forever, she has taken a step toward reclaiming her life. The days after cutting ties with Victor are some of the hardest Noor has ever faced. The financial struggle returns with a vengeance, and her apartment feels emptier than ever without the constant influx of gifts and money. But the air is lighter, too, free from the weight of his presence. Noor spends hours staring at blank canvases, her mind battling doubts about whether she made the right choice. But one day, something shifts. She picks up her brush and begins to paint, not for Victor, not for survival, but for herself. Her strokes are raw, filled with emotion and truth. She paints her pain, her struggle, and her resilience. The piece that emerges is unlike anything she's ever created, a reflection of her journey and the scars it's left behind. As she steps back to admire her work, she feels a flicker of hope. Her path forward is uncertain, but for the first time, it's hers to shape. Thank you for watching this story of struggle, sacrifice, and self-discovery. Noor's journey reminds us of the complexity of survival and the importance of reclaiming our own narratives. If this story moved you, please like, share, and comment your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more stories that explore the raw and real sides of life. See you next time.